Hi guys, welcome to another episode of What Am I Drinking? Today I decided, as per your request, to take a little bit of a different tact. I wanted to introduce to you now a little bit on how we actually taste the wine. There is a routine around tasting wine, to taste wine like a professional, or maybe even if you're not a professional, to learn the sequence to getting the best out of your appreciation of the wine. And there are actually 5 steps, 5 pretty simple steps to tasting wine like a pro. First of all, why do we go through this routine? Firstly, it's so that we learn about the wine, so we can learn a lot about the wine through this routine. Secondly, is so that we can enjoy the wine. If you're having a dinner, for example, and you've got a really nice wine, how do you try to enjoy the wine as much as you possibly can? And this takes focus and attention. So even if, for example, I'm at a wine tasting, it takes a lot of focus, a lot of attention to detail, a lot of concentration for a sommelier or a wine taster by profession to go through the routine properly so that he will learn as much as he could about that particular wine. Today I've chosen a Chateau D'Esclans. The producer is Sacha Luchin, which is Chateau D'Esclans. And the wine is called Whispering Angel. Such a beautiful name, actually. It's a 2018 vintage, which is not so normal for a rosé wine, which is usually meant to be drunk very young. But 2018 was a fantastic year. So I'm pretty sure that this vintage is still perfectly drinkable. I chose a rosé wine on purpose, actually. And the reason is we still have this perception that rosé wine is maybe not a serious wine or possibly not particularly great quality wine. And I can assure you there are some fantastic, great quality rosés. It's not frowned upon to drink rosé wine. You men out there, it's not girly to drink rosé wine. I love rosé wine. So as you can see, I'm already swirling the wine. That's the second one. So the first one, so we've got 5 S's. The first S is see, then swirl, sniff, sip, and savor. I'll go through them again. It's see, swirl, sniff, sip, and savor. So the first one, we actually want to see the wine. To see the wine, to properly look at the wine, we like to put it against a white background. And why is that? Because if you put it against, for example, a dark background, the color is going to be distorted. If you put it against a white background, you can see the proper color. First reason why we always fill the glass only to here. We don't fill it up all the way, because if you want to tilt it against a white background, then you cannot if the glass is too full. So you tilt it against the white background. As you can see, so we're looking at a rosé wine, so I can already notice it's pink. The color is a salmon pink. It's a beautiful salmon pink color. And what else do we know just from the colors? So we see the intensity. It's quite a dark, intense color. From the color itself, we can also note the age of the wine. So for example, this one is quite a dark salmon color, when usually I know that Côte de Provence is a light pink salmon color. So this shows that it's got that slight age on it. Just from the color, we already know that it's got a little bit of age. It actually has just 1-2 years. It's just 1-2 years old. Also, we look out possibly for bubbles, and that is usually a fault in the wine. No bubbles, seems clear to me. All set to go. The next one is swirling. So what we do is we swirl the wine in the glass to aerate it. For people that are not used to swirling, I suggest swirling on the table. Just making circles on the table. It's much easier. You're not going to spill the wine. You can swirl it pretty vigorously. And that just aerates the wine, gets the wine going. So what does aerating the wine actually do? It's like amplifying the sound on your speakers, so it's getting out all the aromas, all the flavors. They're all being developed, they're all being aerated. Once they're in touch with oxygen, they rise to their potential, so they increase, right? So we keep swirling and swirling to make sure it's aerated and getting in touch with the oxygen. Okay, the next is the nose. So we smell, and we know that it's been proven now that 90% of our taste is actually from the nose, from the olfactory bulb, which is situated somewhere, just somewhere above the nose. And we take a nice deep whiff to get in all the smells from the wine. And just from the nose, what do we learn from the nose? So we assess if the wine is corked or oxidized. Does it have a cardboard smell to it? If that's the case, then we probably know that the wine is off or oxidized. We also get to know a little bit the age of the wine and the intensity of the wine. So this is rather intense. So when it comes to the age of the wine, that comes from the aromas or the flavors. So in this case, I'm getting fruit flavors just from the nose, which usually indicates that the wine is young. So over here, we've got a slight maybe contradiction between the color and the nose. So the color was telling me that it's got slight age, but the nose is telling me that no, I'm still young. And that's brilliant. It means that the wine is probably young. So I would prefer relying on my nose than just the color, right? So I'm getting lovely fruit aromas, strawberry aromas. Lovely. That is really beautiful. And to get these aromas, how is this done? So what we usually do is we train our nose. So we have to concentrate on what aromas or flavors we are smelling or tasting. So there is a pack that sommeliers use, which is called Le Nez-du-Vin, which has little bottles of smells, and you can actually test your nose with these little bottles. So for example, you've got a bottle with a vanilla scent, and you smell it and you know, okay, so this is what vanilla should smell of. This is what honey should smell of. This is what raspberry should smell of. And it helps people like me develop my sensory glands to get the best out of the flavors, to know exactly what I'm smelling. For other people that don't have the Le Nez-du-Vin, these little bottles, it's all about concentration. It's all about being aware of what you're smelling. Maybe even think of, okay, am I smelling cherry? Am I smelling raspberry? Sometimes if you ask yourself, what am I smelling? Could it be this? And then once you smell, you say, yes, it is this, or no, I don't think I'm smelling that. So sometimes it's easier to get a list of aromas or flavors. You can even download these from the internet. If anybody wants, I can send you a list of aromas or flavors so that you can go through this process in your head so that you can better understand what you are smelling. So that's the third S. So it's see, swirl, sniff. And now for the best part, which is sip. Now when you sip the wine, you need to aerate the wine again in your mouth, get it in touch with the oxygen. So we like to, when we sip, we suck a little bit through. It's probably not the most polite thing in the middle of a restaurant, so try and do that a little bit slowly. Sometimes I forget as well myself. But that helps. Again, it's like amplifying the flavors and the sound of the wine. So it's like amplifying the sound of music in your stereo. So then you want to swirl it all around your mouth to get to all the tastes and all the senses inside your mouth. And that is really important. And then you concentrate on certain criteria. First one being, is it a dry or a sweet wine? This one is a dry wine. It's got sweet hints to it, so it's very fruity, and that gives you a perception of sweetness, but it's not sweet, it's dry. There's no sweetness in the mouth. It's a bone dry wine. The acidity. Now the acidity is really important. Acidity is what keeps wine fresh and gives wine longevity. For freshness, the acidity needs to be high and crisp. In a rosé, I would expect crisp, fresh acidity. It's really important. So this one is crisp extremely refreshing. The acidity is actually, I would say, searing acidity. It's really high in acidity, and that usually tells someone that it probably is from a place like Côte de Provence, where they've got altitude and latitude as well, so they're pretty high up, and because of the weather, the coldish climate, it gives them good acidity in the grape. It gives sweetness, but also very good acidity. So I would already imagine that, okay, so it's a salmon light pink color, it's got very high acidity, so I'm already starting to build an opinion of the wine, and that opinion is already Côte de Provence. If it were, for example, a southern Italian rosé from somewhere like Sicily, then I would expect the color to be darker, because it's more southern than Côte de Provence, and I would expect the acidity to be slightly lower, also because it's more southern than Côte de Provence. I would expect the same in Chile. If, for example, I'm tasting a rosé from New Zealand, then maybe I would expect the acidity to also be pretty high, just like the Côte de Provence, because of latitude. Same reasoning. So just from the acidity, we already can somewhat guess where the wine is from. Then we check the body. It's quite a full-bodied, I would say medium to full-bodied wine for a rosé, which is lovely. And then we get into the aromas and the flavors, and that's the best part. So I would say strawberry, and that is the primary flavor. So then what we do is we go through 3 different categories of flavors. There's primary flavors, secondary flavors, and tertiary flavors. Primary flavors are usually fruit and floral, and that is what comes from the vineyard or from the grape. So the grape variety itself dictates, or should dictate, the primary flavors. And these are usually, in a young wine, the first flavors you get. So this is made from Grenache, it's a blend of grapes, Grenache, Syrah, a little bit of Carignan, and Rolle, which is Vermentino. And it gives you these fresh strawberry flavors, cherry flavors, maybe some nectarine flavors. So those are the primary flavors that I get. Also, once you get the primary flavors, you know that it's a very young wine. So even though it's 2018, my nose and my palate were saying the same thing, which is very important, because once your nose and your palate are saying 2 different things, it usually means that there's something, maybe the quality of the wine isn't so great. But here they're saying exactly the same thing. So the color was maybe a little bit on the old side, but the nose and the palate say this is young. So I'm getting these lovely fruit. Then you get secondary flavors, and that's when you start concentrating a little bit more. And I get this creaminess. So there's a creaminess, there's a minerality to it, but there's no oak. So the creaminess comes from what they actually do in the winemaking process. So now the human intervention comes in, and that's why it's called the secondary flavors. So the creaminess is considered a secondary flavor, and the creaminess is due to batonnage. So even if I have this blind and I get this creaminess, I would then start saying, okay, it seems the winemaker used batonnage. Now batonnage is all it is lees stirring. So when they leave the wine, the must in the vats, what they do is every now and again they would actually stir it. So there'll be the skins will drop the yeast to the bottom of the vat, and then they would actually stir them, just big wooden spoons, for example, and just stir them, and that will mix the lees around the wine and give it a bit of a creamy taste. However, I don't get oak, so I don't get the secondary flavors of oak. I don't get any vanilla, I don't get any coconut. So I've made this decision, or this assumption, just from the flavors, that it was not aged in oak. And as a matter of fact, I'm quite sure that Whispering Angel is aged in stainless steel vats. So you get a certain minerality from that, a lovely, refreshing minerality. And that is what rosé is probably supposed to be. Rosé is supposed to be light and fun and enjoyable and, not too complicated. And this is exactly that. And it really is enjoyable. That's lovely. The The fifth S is to savor the wine. Now this, I would probably split it in two parts. The first part is the length and the balance. So how long does the wine actually remain tasting in your mouth? And I would say it is pretty long. Now the length of the wine actually remaining in your mouth, the taste remaining in your mouth, actually means quality. It is a definition for quality. So the really expensive wines should remain really long in your mouth. Also, sometimes what happens is you smell the wine and it's really intense, and then on the palate you get this big rush of fruit, and then all of a sudden it's gone. It's just nothing. It's just like you had water. That usually is because of the quality of the wine. And that's when you know that the quality of wine is lower. So over here I am deciding that the quality of the wine is very high. Not necessarily the price, the quality is extremely high because it keeps lingering on in the mouth. The second thing is balance. Do I find everything in balance? This is not so easy, but how balanced are the tannins, the acidity, the flavors, the tertiary flavors, which we didn't really get into because there are no tertiary flavors that I get. And usually, I apologize here, tertiary flavors are from what you get from age. So that could be in a red wine, for example, you would get leather, you would get meat flavors, or barnyard flavors, for example, or wet leaves, mushroom, forest floor. Those are all tertiary flavors. Those all come because the wine has been matured for a length of time. There are a few people that might find it a little bit difficult to start appreciating these flavors, but some of them are actually really beautiful flavors, and you start enjoying them even more. What's interesting, going back to the flavors and the whole conclusion of the wine, is, so there's primary, secondary and tertiary flavors. If immediately you get, for example, tertiary flavors, but you get zero primary flavors, so for example you have a red wine and you get a lot of leather, oak, cigar box and barnyard flavors, but absolutely no fruit, then the chances are the wine is probably over the top or just that little bit too old. If you've got a total cohesion, total balance of primary, secondary and tertiary flavors, my opinion is, and then that the wine is peaking. It's at perfection. You've got this total balance of fruit flavors, the acidity is still there, because once the acidity goes down, you've lost the balance of the wine, and the freshness is all there. The body is still there, it's not flabby, and that's when everything just comes together, and that is why the savor part, or the conclusion of the wine, is extremely important. The second part is actually your emotions, and I think this is what wine is all about. The olfactory bulb is actually scientifically connected to your emotions. So that bulb triggers your emotions. So for example, the emotions I get from drinking this wine is fun, summer, barbecue, yachting, sailing. It's these emotions that I get. Fresh fruit, jumping around in a field. These are the emotions that I would get, which is very typical of Côte de Provence. I hope I wasn't too complicated over there. If I had to rate this wine, I think it's a good idea to start rating wines, and I suggest that maybe you even use apps yourself so that you start learning what wines you like, what wines you don't like, start putting down flavors, maybe have a diary, use the Vivino app, for example, which I think is fantastic, and you can start putting down the flavors or the aromas or how you feel the wine is, so that you keep track and you keep record of the wines that you like. If I had to rate this wine, I would give it a 90 out of 100, which is an extremely high rating, because I think this is a fantastic wine. It's a pity that I didn't speak too much about the wine, so kudos to Sacha Lichine, the producer behind it. A guy that I actually met, a very flamboyant guy, pretty cool. Larger than life, if I may say. And I think his wines reflect that larger than life attitude. They also have some really good, fantastic, top-end premium wines, such as Garros, which is splendid, and then that is aged in oak. So then you get secondary and possibly even tertiary flavors because you can age it quite a bit. Hopefully that will be another tasting. In the meantime, stay safe, have a good week, cheers.